All right, so I'm just going to do a little demo on taking some of the existing drawings that you've already done, like your plane oblique or your elevations, and adding color and entourage. We've already done some of the entourage stuff in one of the other classes, but I decided to start from scratch here. And I'm going to create like a little patio space here. Whoops. And I'm just roughing in these lines to define the spaces. I've decided I want there to be a, a you know, this is where the stairs are too, I think, and the elevation. So we're going to put a nice a tree with a canopy of some kind over here that even overlaps that space. Here's where the center of that tree is. And I'm going to put some shrubs over here like I had done in the previous example. And right next to this door entrance here, I'm going to put a potted plant. And I'm just going to rough in some of the brickwork for the patio. These are going to be those large pavers. So I'm just kind of roughing in where the grout lines would be for the pattern what we'd see. So you're going to go through and just kind of add those elements. And I'm doing this in pencil. And then we're going to add some color to this. I'm not really being very careful about exactly where these bricks are going. If I were you, I'd spend a little bit more time than what I'm doing, but this is just to give you a rough idea. Looks like we need another layer there. So you'd go through and keep adding all of these elements in here. So let's pretend let's just add a few more like this. I'm just going to be random about it. And then I would like to create a crushed stone walkway that is maybe defined somewhere here. We can have a few more things growing in this little pocket here between the crushed stone walkway and the side of the patio. Just kind of define that space. And then we'll have another crushed stone maybe going towards the back of the house right here. So now I'm ready to kind of add color to these to help define them as what they are. And we can do this by adding color to the background or adding color to the actual subject matter of the items that we have. I'm thinking, you know, for instance, the crushed stone pathway might be like white or gray rocks, and then we have some green spaces where grass is and no crushed stone, and then we have maybe a tan or a red brick for the patio area. Actually, this is where the end of those stairs are, right? So just think we're going to assume the stairs just end here and walk down onto that crushed stone pathway. So we want to add color to this to give this a little bit more oomph. And this is a photocopy, by the way. I want to make sure you know that. I don't think it's a great idea to do these color studies on your originals. It can lead to crying. So I'm going to pull out some things that I'd like to use for color. I'm imagining that this has a hardwood floor, so I'm going to pull out some browns and goldenrod or yellows. I like these colors for my hardwood floors right here. And then I would like the siding of my container. I want these to be red containers, so I'm going to use reds and get a variety of reds going on here. And then I know I want to use a combination of maybe browns and reds for the brick, and then I need a nice gray to use for the crushed stone. I like this gray, and I'll use a regular gray. What does that say? It says dark brown. I'll add that one over to here. Well, I got black, and I might have to hunt around for the gray. And then I need lots of greens for all of my foliage that I've got in here to add. So I'm going to pull out some greens. Different colored greens, muted greens, and all kinds. And I probably want yellow for highlights for that too. Okay, so now I've got all the colors that I plan on using and going back and forth between. So I'm going to start with adding a little bit of shading for the floor. And my hardwood floors are going to be going in this direction. This way on this side. And then I'm going to imagine that there's a spot where they kind of like randomly change and maybe go in this direction here. So like each one of these could have a spot where the end of the, we'll say that the end of the planks are kind of being feathered here and changing direction. So I've started off, this is my base color. I'm going very light wash so I have a chance to build the pigment up. And in some areas I'm going to put some different colored planks. So I'm not going to define these planks by line work. I'm going to define them by kind of putting in some shaded sections like I'm doing here. And when you look at a wood floor too, it's not all one color. It's a lot of different colors. So I'm just kind of filling in that space with all those different colors. I really am just trying to create like a little bit of an illusion of all these different colors, and this is a much darker wood color. I want to be careful not to use this in too many places, just a few. And maybe underneath the chairs we can use that color for suggesting a little shadow. So there's my kind of hardwood floor stuff. I'm kind of going to blend that a little bit more and maybe do a wash over the whole thing so I don't see as much white coming through, but I really just want that to read as more or less one color with some variations. And try some things out. If you don't like the way something looks, try another technique. Change the direction that your shading is going in. Just try all sorts of things. And I do want to add pochette to the walls here. If you already had poche added, you know, you could do it with ink, or you can do it with the colored pencils like I'm doing here. It just helps to define the space a lot better if we have all of the tops of the walls shaded with the same dark gray or black. I've always found that it defines the spaces a lot better by being able to see those walls really defined by the poche. But I'm not going with a total, pitch black here by just putting in one single layer of black here. I'm shading it more or less, not. So when you do the ink, it definitely is a lot more dramatic. It comes off the page. All right, so there's all of our walls defined, but now I want to see if I can make the sides of the container have sort of that red corrugated look. So I'm going to start off with a true red, and I'm assuming that my sunlight is kind of hitting this face, so I want this to be a really bright red in the front, and then we're going to add some shading to some of the sides just to kind of give the impression or the illusion that we have sunlight hitting this at some direction. So this side is going to have 2 layers of red, 2 different reds I'm using here. I used more of the true red, and now I'm using the orange red. And I think I do want to go back on this and show the corrugated metal on this side. I'm going to do that after I get the shading done for both sides here. So on this side, I'm going to imagine that the sun's not hitting this side quite as well. So I'm going to darken the amount of pigment. In other words, lay more color down. And use the same blended reds. And then I'm going to add some brown, or actually maybe let's add some blue to that red as a shadow. So put the edge there, and so this is in shadow. This blue, this red is still the same red, but it's not showing up with quite the same amount of intensity. So that side looks a little bit shaded now. This side is looking like it's in the sunlight more. And I want to add that texture of the corrugated metal to the side of this, and I'm just doing this with pencil. And the edges here have these corners. So I'm starting to kind of show the features of the siding that I'm seeing in this view. And I would just kind of continue with that. And this side is facing the same direction, so it would have the same shading applied to it with a little bit of blue added. Get those 2 reds in there. Add a little bit of a layer of blue to suggest that that's the side that's not getting the full light. And then I'm going to add the siding on that side too. And make sure your siding is going in the same direction as all the rest of your lines, otherwise it's going to stick out. It'd be pretty obvious that it's incorrect. All right, for The brick on the outside, I'm going to use a combination of brown and red to create that. So I'm going to do a light wash of brown over the whole thing. Start that off as my base color. And you see how little pigment I'm laying down to begin with? I really don't want to overwhelm and put too much down there. I want to be able to build that pigment up. And then I'm going to add a little bit of red. We'll change the direction that the shading is going in, so we get that brown kind of peeking through the red. I'm skirting around some of those trees and things. I want to be able to see that green come through the red and not be overwhelmed by the red. And then we're gonna I'm just gonna go in and darken some of these pavers in certain areas, but not everywhere. And I think what that does is we talked about this the other day, is like, how do you make sure that you're making a pattern that isn't too overwhelming? You don't necessarily see every paver. We want the suggestion of the pavers and that the pattern continues everywhere. But you can start to just kind of put the pavers in certain areas and let that pattern continue in someone's mind's eye. Because we have the ability to do that. We can kind of imagine, oh, I see that pattern's probably just spreading over the whole thing. And so just finding little spots that you want to be able to see that brick pattern in those overlapping brick layers. And doing that every now and again is going to be enough to define that pattern. So now we have the pavers kind of being shown up. And if you wanted to go back in and let's highlight some of these pavers with a little bit more red randomly, and then let's highlight some of them with a little bit more brown.